Studies from March of 2021 have found that approximately 129 billion face masks are used around the world each month. That's around 3 million face masks a minute. If we assume that 10 face masks put back to back is around 2 centimeters in thickness, then 3 million face masks is around 6,000 meters. To put that into perspective, this soccer field behind me is only around 120 meters in length. That means you would need around 50 times the length of this soccer field to get to 6,000 meters. Additionally, unlike other plastic products like plastic water bottles, there are no clear guidelines on how to recycle and dispose of plastic face masks. That means a much larger proportion of plastic face masks end up in the environment. That means our rivers and eventually our oceans, where weathering can break them down into microplastics that are only millimeters or micrometers in width. So what can we do about this problem? Let's have a look at what our team has done this season.
The first thing we did was send out emails to professors, chemists, material scientists, and basically anyone who would have knowledge about masks and maybe some insight into how we could recycle them. From our own research and the replies we received, we learned that most disposable face masks are made from polypropylene, a polymer used for a large variety of different applications. We also learned that the most common way to recycle polypropylene is to shred it into small pieces, then heat it up again to reshape it. Of course, before we did anything, we had to make sure we properly protected ourselves. To prevent the inhalation of any possible fumes, we did all the heating and melting of polypropylene outdoors and always kept our masks on. Later on, we eventually also acquired 2 sets of OV/R95 respirators, just to be on the extra safe side of things. As with dealing with anything else that gets hot, there was always a fire extinguisher nearby, as we wouldn't want something like this to happen.
Have you ever seen a burn victim? Okay, procedure. Exit options. Where do we go, folks? Use a what to cover the mouth? A what? A rag, a damp rag, perhaps. Let's remember those procedures. What are the options? Okay, that's the wrong way. We've already tried that. Remember your exit point.
Moving on. With all of that sorted out, we could finally start testing out different methods to recycle the masks. And boy, did we try a lot of things. Polypropylene has a melting point of 160 degrees Celsius. So first, we went out and bought a heat gun, which you can probably find in any local hardware store. Then, we put a bunch of masks in a metal bowl and started blowing very, very hot air onto them. We ended up with something that looks a bit like this. This just proved that we could, in fact, melt disposable plastic masks and create something. So we bought a cheap secondhand panini press off of eBay to see if we could make some flat, plate-like pieces. The results were not exactly what we were expecting. We experimented a lot more. Some ideas proved to be not very successful, while others would pave the way to our finding the final method. Pressing the masks into a metal socket cover, also from a local hardware store, proved that the panini press concept could work if we left the plastic to cool before opening it. We also found that we could make molds from aluminum foil and place broken up pieces of already melted masks into these molds. The only problem was that we could not actually press down with the panini press lest the aluminum foil crumble. However, this experiment did give us an idea of how we could finally create something that we were happy with. Now let's back up a bit here. Before we can start melting the masks, there are 2 parts that need to be removed: the metal wire that goes on your nose and the ear straps. The first step is to make a parallel cut with the shorter side of the mask, around 1 or 2 centimeters in should do. Then you can sort of squeeze, push, and pull the metal wire until it comes out. The last step is to just rip the straps off both sides of the mask, and we've actually found that the metal wires inside can also be reused as twist ties for wiring purposes. The aluminum crumpling may have foiled our plans temporarily, but we soon came up with a solution. We went to our local hardware store, this is the last time I promise, and found these sheets of aluminum that are approximately 5 millimeters thick. What we can do with these is put them on a cutting board, line up a ruler, press a solid object down on the ruler, and start slicing. Around 10 cuts with a sharp X-Acto or hobby knife should be enough for our thickness. After that, you can grab a hold of the strip with a wrench or pair of pliers and start wiggling. This process may take a bit longer, but luckily you won't have to repeat it that many times. Now, you can take the tool you were using just previously and just bend the metal strip into any shape you want. In this example, I'll just be making a simple square. With the shape complete, a way to connect the two ends of the strips must be used. We just took this hand pruner and cut two slits slightly more than halfway across the width of the strip. Then you can just slot them together like so, and voila, we have a shape. This is where the fun begins. Now we can move on to the melting part of our method at last. The first part of this may seem familiar, in that we just melt a bunch of masks using the heat gun. You can see here that parts of the bottom are not fully melted, which can happen. All you have to do is flip it over and blow on it some more. With this solid piece, we go back to the hammer and chisel and start breaking it into smaller parts. The next step is to put the smaller pieces into your molds. As you can see, in this case, we are making team numbers to put on our robot. We can now turn on the panini press and close the lid. After about 15 minutes of waiting for it to melt, and then 30 more minutes of cooling, we can open the lid to find 5 nice plastic numbers. There is some spillage outside of the molds, but these extremely thin, flaky parts are easy to snap right off. And here is what the completed numbers look like on our robot. So why did we do all this again? Because there are 50 lengths of a soccer field's worth of masks being discarded every single minute. We've shown you what we have done with plastic masks, so now it's up to you. Take our method, modify it to your needs, or come up with something completely new. If you have any questions or just want to discuss things, you can comment down below or find us by email or Instagram. We know that we are not yet done with recycling face masks, and we would love for you to join us.